Hi. Next, we are going to discuss the ethical issues in corporate governance, especially in India, and then what measures we can do to plug the loopholes in the ethical governance of the corporate. So, let us start. First thing is ethical issues in corporate governance in India. So we have discussed in general what are all the ethical issues involved in the corporate governance, but this time we will be specifically focusing on India. We will be taking more Indian examples and all. So let us begin. First thing is conflict of interest. Conflict of interest. This particular topic we will be discussing very much in details in the other segments, but roughly here I introduce you what is conflict of interest. Conflict of interest means in corporate or in public office you are for the public interest, but as an employee you can also have some private interest, like you want to make money out of corruption, you want to get someone close to you a job in the company or in the government. You can wish like getting tenders or contracts to people known to you so that you can get good name in them, or you can get some kickback, some money, some favor from them. So all these things, they are interest, different interests. So what is conflict of interest in corporate is that the conflict of interest will be between the personal interest and between the interest of the corporation. So this is called conflict of interest. See, for example, this Chanda Kochar case, ICICI Bank. What happened in Chanda Kochar case is that she is in ICICI, her husband is in Videocon. So this company ICICI transferred some money to Videocon. This ICICI transferred some money to Videocon for some quid pro benefit from the Videocon to ICICI. So it was here that Chanda Kochar, who was hailed as the poster girl of the success of women in Indian corporate, she was an ideal, she was inspiration, she was motivation for many women, especially in the corporate sector. All of a sudden, with this one single misuse of her authority, with single misuse of failure to manage this conflict of interest, from here she came here. So this is how first thing is conflict of interest. Second problem in Indian corporates is separation of ownership and management. It's very blurred in India, and I told you the first difference between business and corporation is separation of ownership and management. So the very root of the concept, the very core of the concept is having some issue in India. So the second issue is separation of ownership and management is not clear. This becomes all the more important because in India we are having so many family run businesses. For example, you name the name Tata, Birla, they have been they have become a proverbial name for the, I will not say nepotism in corporate, but they are family business. For centuries, for past few generations, they are doing business. All these Tatas, Birla, Shapoorji, Palonji and all. And apart from them, the new businesses, they are also mostly family run. For example, this ICICI Chanda Kochar case we took. Then you can take the name of Jindal Group. Then you can take the name of Ambani Group. They are more like a family business than on a strict corporate lines. We had seen the case of Yes Bank and Rana Kapoor also. It was also a kind of family kind of business only, which created all the issue for the Yes Bank recently. So this ownership and management separation line is very thin in India, and at times this line is very blurred. So this creates many issues in the Indian corporate segment. See, for example, Satyam computers also. That was also becoming like a family business only. Most of the important posts were taken by the person known to K. Ramalingam Raju only. So third problem in Indian corporate is weak boards. The board of directors are very weak. They are actually they are not de facto they are not using their power. They are a kind of just the ceremonial office, the way our president office is there. They are more like a ceremonial office, and they are not able to control the management. They are not able to control the promoters. So these management, promoters and all, they allow the business to be run in a way, the things to go in a way which profit them more than the stakeholder, shareholder and other people. So this is another big problem in Indian corporate. Next problem would be executive compensation. Like those holding higher positions in the company, we have discussed this so many times, that they are cornering more benefit, and those who are owning lesser share and all, they are given less benefit. So this is not in the true sense of the corporate. The corporate, if risk is distributed, the benefit should also be distributed. If the risk is, when the loss is happening, see for example, there is a popular saying in India that profit is privatized and loss is nationalized. What is the meaning? That when companies, banks and all these corporate bodies face losses, they go to the government will be giving them the package, and in that package the government will give them tax benefit and other benefits, so that they run their business and they do not face difficulties. But when they are having profit, then also they are not sharing the profit with the government. So profit becomes their profit, but the loss becomes the loss of the government and loss of the people. And where this all the government package and all these things comes from, they are all taxpayers' money. They are our money and your money. They are not the money of the corporates. What corporates' money is, they are not giving due in terms of their tax and other obligations, corporate social responsibilities and all. But whenever the loss is coming, they are coming right to the government and they are saying, please help us, we want to get away from this loss. So this is also a big problem in India's corporates. Next big problem in Indian corporate is audit. And I tell you, audit, the internal audit and the third party audit, both is having problem. What is the problem? I am telling you the basic problem in the audit. In the audit sector, there is the basic problem of conflict of interest. What conflict of interest problem is there with the audit? The audit bodies are appointed by they are appointed and they are paid by the company itself. So suppose there is a company by the name Xerox Inc. Suppose there is a company by this name. Suppose I am an auditor, I go to audit here. Whatever remuneration I am receiving and whatever appointment I am receiving, it is given by them. So would I be giving any adverse comment to them? No. So this audit problem is the root cause of most of the corporate problems in India. So this is also a very important segment for corporates in India. Now next problem we are having is enforcement. See, we have all the laws, we have companies law, we have Prevention of Money Laundering Act, we have Companies Act, we have many other acts, IT Act, we have many other acts, we have Foreign Exchange Management Act, FEMA, we have everything, we have Competition Act, you name it and we have it. We have policies also on voluntary sector, corporate social responsibility, everything we have, but the real problem is that they are mostly on paper, they are not on ground. So their enforcement or implementation is very weak. their enforcement or their implementation is very weak. So that is the problem. See, auditor is there, auditor has to do the audit, everything on paper is there, but on ground the implementation is weak. There are many loopholes. Those loopholes are also exploited by the vested interest, and they somehow get away with the law. See, for example, we have in IBC, Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code. It provides for the timeline that within this time the process has to be completed. But timelines are more violated than respected. The violation is the rule, and the sticking to the timeline is the exception. So in this scenario, rules are there, everything is there, but they are only paper tiger. They cannot really bite you, they cannot pounce upon you. They are tiger, they are very strong just on paper but not on the ground. See, for example, and this is not only with the corporates in India. In India, in general public spirit, in general attitude, we are called a soft state also. We are called a soft state by the famous Scandinavian scholar Gunnar Myrdal. Gunnar Myrdal, he has called India as a soft state, that our country do not have political willingness to enact a strong law, and if at all a strong law is enacted, the implementation is weak, and political willpower to enactment and enforcement of the law is very weak. So we are a soft state, our government is very soft, they are not hard in terms of implementation of the acts. So these are the basic problems in the corporates in India. So next we will be discussing what measures can be taken to improve the corporate governance in India. Measures to improve corporate governance in India. So, corporate governance, we can take multiple measures, but all the measures that we take in the improvement of corporate governance, we can bifurcate them. One, the measure related with the government, and one, the measure related with the institutional measure or for the corporate and all. So let us discuss all the measures broadly under these two headings. So let us first discuss the measures related with the institutions. What can we do at the institutional level? So first of all we can have code of conduct. Code of conduct and then code of ethics. These things we should have. We will deal in a detailed manner with code of conduct, what is code of conduct, what is code of ethics, somewhere else in the syllabus. But here, just for your reference, I introduce the term code of conduct. What is conduct? Conduct is a deliberated behavior. It is thoughtful behavior. It is not a spontaneous, it is not instantaneous. You apply your brain among so many alternatives, you choose one alternative and then you follow that alternative, and that is your conduct. And your conduct is the thoughtful behavior, and code is the collection of laws and all, collection of do's and do nots, you can say. So this code of conduct, like suppose I am working in corporate, I would be thinking that okay, it is okay for me to be in office and be in Instagram, be in Facebook, be in WhatsApp, or be in, for that matter, Twitter. But maybe the code of conduct of the company will say you have to avoid all those social media sites while you are in office, while you are at work. So their code of conduct guides your behavior, what to do, what not to do. So this code of conduct is a kind of do's and do nots. Do's and do nots. So this code of conduct should be seriously enforced. It should be enacted. It should be distributed to the person who is holding the office. Suppose I am board of directors. Suppose I am one of the director. Then my code of conduct should be clear to me. It should be written. It should be given to me, and I should be able to understand it, and then I should be able to abide it. And then there should be mechanism that if I do not abide, then I have to face the punishment. So all these institutional mechanism related with the code of conduct has to be there to control the behavior of everyone, be it the board of director, be it individual employees, be it the management. See, for example, if there is code of conduct for management, suppose there is code of conduct for the management and it says that managers cannot falsify the account, or manager cannot fabricate the account, or manager cannot use false methods, or manager cannot use force, then then suppose land acquisition is happening. Suppose for a big company land acquisition is happening, the manager or the bigger authority goes on the ground and they collude with the police, they collude with the politician, then politician use the force to chase away the villagers who are opposing the land acquisition, and then the factory starts, and maybe factory starts, but slowly when the factory is working, all the pressure is building up from the side of community and all, and maybe one day you have to give up your business, the way the Sterlite plant was closed in Tamil Nadu. So if maybe this management guy, to get his promotion and all, he will not show up to the company that he is using foul means, but in the meantime he will be using foul means to secure the business, secure the land, and he will show profit, he will get his promotion and all, but in the long term everyone will be at loss. The government will lose the land, the revenue, the company will lose its brand name, the people will lose the serene environment, the clean nature, the clean water, the pollution will be there. So everyone will be at loss, this management guy only will be at profit. So if there is proper code of conduct or proper code of ethics, all these kind of scenarios we can somehow avoid, we can prevent them. Next measure we can think is, now I will say all these measures which will start with ethics name. We can call them collectively ethics infrastructure. We can collectively call them ethics infrastructure. So they all together will form ethics infrastructure. So let us see what other measures related with ethics infrastructure could be. Like there should be ethics committee. See, for example, you might know that in our parliament also there is ethics committee. What the job of ethics committee is, that they are the watchdog of ethics in the corporate. So they will be setting the standard, they will be overseeing the implementation of the code of conduct and all, the code of ethics and all. So they will be like, see, for example, in the board of directors we have so many committees, we call them board committees. So like one of the committees in the parliament, ethics committee, we can also have a parallel committee in the company. Suppose say board of director would have one committee on ethics committee of the board. Then we can have ethics committee at the management level also. Then we can have ethics committee at the plant level or at the department level. So we can have a decentralized structure of the ethics committee right from the top board till the bottom. So this will be the enforcing body, the watchdog to look after the ethics system in the company. So this ethics committee is very important. Next we can also focus on transparency and openness. See, there is a popular saying in ethics, regarding the transparency, regarding the disclosure, regarding the openness in an organization, be it the private organization, be it corporate, be it the government organization, be it the public office, or be it anything. The saying goes that sunlight is the best disinfectant. It is sunlight is the best disinfectant. So what happens in general, you might see in our house and all, if something has developed some infection or some, due to due to paucity of sunlight we have some problems in our home and all, humidity and something like mold, yeast and everything will be growing. So if we keep those things in the sunlight, all the biological defects simply disappears. Same is the case with transparency and openness. They are like the sunlight. Once the things are brought to the notice of the people, to the notice of the public at large, to the notice of institutions, to the notice of regulators, to the notice of auditors, to the notice of committee, then those things can be nipped in the bud itself. They can be nipped in the bud itself. And this nipping in the bud itself will stop the tree from growing, and the tree of the sins, the tree of the misdeeds, which down the line will cost very heavily to the company, can be prevented. See, for example, Singur Tata land acquisition, or for example, see Sterlite only. A Sterlite company which got closed in Tamil Nadu 2-3 years back. There was huge protest and all. So what has happened, if initially only if the effluent treatment was not being done, if environment pollution was happening, if people in the local community were not happy, if all these things was brought to the notice of the management, brought to the notice of the government authorities, brought to the notice of state pollution control boards, brought to the notice of different committees in the corporate itself, then all these protests and all the closure of the company would have been avoided. But nothing of that sort happened. The information was hidden for very long, and this information hidden, there was a pile of anger again of the people, and suddenly there was burst, and this burst led to closure of the factory. So if sunlight is the best disinfectant, if the information is coming in the public, we know that there are stress points in our operation, in the operation of the company, there is dissatisfaction among the people and all. If those things are conveyed to the larger people or to the authority who are in charge of the things, if they are brought to their notice, then some measure can happen, and those things can be controlled in the right time, and damage will be less. So next point we will be discussing ethics audit. What we mean by ethics audit? Suppose there is ethics committee. This ethics committee will see that every say 6 months, 3 months or 5 months at different levels, suppose board of director, at the level of management, then at the level of auditors, then at the level of individual employees, they will carry out ethics audit. Like randomly they will go somewhere and they will grill the people in charge of the situation, that are you following all the ethical guidelines of the company, are you following all the code of conducts and all. So this ethics audit will ensure periodically that yes, we are adhering to everything. So we are adhering to the set process, we are adhering to the law, we are adhering to everything. So this ethics audit is very important. Then next thing could be ethics seminar or workshop kind of thing. What happens in ethics seminar or workshop? This is for the purpose of awareness. Suppose say weekly, monthly, bi-monthly, semester wise, tri-monthly, once in a year, twice in a year for senior managements and all, for all rank of people, there should be ethics seminar. In those seminar, workshop, people will come, there will be chief speakers, they will be teaching the different employee what is expected out of them, what should they do, what is right or wrong for them, what they ought to do, because ethics is not only about should, ethics is about ought. So what is difference between should and ought? Should is the good behavior, ought is the best, the highest behavior. So ethics is not about the good one, ethics is about the best one. So all these ethics seminar and all, they will brush up their understanding of ethics, what an employee is expected to do, what he is expected not to do, all these things will be clear to the employee. So this will help him a lot in understanding and implementing the ethics in his company. So next we come about ethics risk assessment. ethics risk assessment. So what happens under ethics risk assessment? See, for example, in every organization, be it corporate or something, there are few positions where the chances of lapse, chances of misuse of authority, chances of something wrong happening is more. See, for example, suppose there is a bank. In the bank, the frontline employees, they are likely to trouble to the customer more rather than managers and all. In the same way, you can take the case of PNB bank scam, Mehul Choksi and all. Then you can take the case of ICICI bank also, ICICI bank. So all these things you will come across that different positions. Suppose somewhere the middle size manager is responsible, somewhere the board itself is responsible, somewhere the promoter of the company itself is responsible, depending on what kind of business. See, for example, if it is a family run business, so that man who owns the business, the family person, they will be having the more risk of committing some wrong. So in that kind of companies, we can look after the conduct of the promoter itself, the owner. So you have to assess the risk, at which point the risk is more likely to be, and this gives you the idea where to put more effort, where to put less effort. So this ethics risk assessment is very important. Then next point we can do is we can have ethics officer or ethics manager. Like we just discussed, there should be an ethics committee. Committee will be a group of people. Here there should be ethics officer, one single individual. One single individual should be designated as the ethics officer. It will be his duty to teach the employees, to organize the ethics workshop, to carry out the ethics risk assessment, to carry out the ethics seminar, and to look after all the things related with the ethics. This person should be well trained, well groomed in all the things. So this should be a single officer to look after the ethics things, maybe at the micro level. Similarly, ethics officers could be at every level, for the employees, for the management, say for the board, say for the audit. So for everything there could be one designated ethics officer who can look after all the things related with the ethics. Next thing I told you earlier also, there should be zero tolerance to the unethical conduct. See, for example, the cases of violation of code of conduct, code of ethics, they are taken in general very casually in India. This should not be the case, because once you tolerate this small unethical act, the guy will next time do this big unethical act, next time his unethical act will be this big, and next time his unethical act will be this big. So if we nip him in the bud, if we censor him, if we reprimand him, if the penal actions are there at this point only, then all this situation can be prevented. So there should be zero tolerance, and all the penal actions should be taken very seriously. And as we discussed, the very important point that enforcement has to be there. Just by law itself cannot do anything. See, for example, Delhi. On paper, Delhi is polythene free. Delhi is polythene free for many years. But you go to any shopkeepers, you go to any hawkers, you will get polythene so easily. So this is just like once upon a time Supreme Court advocate also told that it is mockery of the law to enact the law but not implement the law. If you do not have the willpower or wish to implement the act, you better do not enact the act itself. Because once you enact the legislation and it is not implemented, the legislation is just a piece of joke. The authorities are just looked with, like people do not respect the authority, the law, anything. They say, okay, law is there, but who will enforce it? So enforcement has to be proper. So all these things related with ethics, I told you ethics officer, ethics committee, ethics workshop, ethics seminar, then ethics risk assessment, all these things comes under the umbrella terms of ethics infrastructure. So we have discussed the institutional measures. Now we will be discussing what are the governmental measures for the corporate governance. What are the measures on the part of government regarding the corporate governance? So first thing could be government could strictly implement all the laws, rules, regulations and all the guidelines and everything. So it is the government's duty to strictly implement them as well as bring the stringent provisions also. So for example, Water Pollution Act, Air Pollution Act, see for example Employee State Insurance Corporation Act and all. There are many instances wherein the rights of the people are violated, maybe the contract laborers and all. There are many protective measures, but those measures are not implementing. They are not implemented. No one takes them seriously. There is no penalty, there is no fine, there is no prosecution, there is no enforcement. So all this state of affairs chalta hai attitude. You might know this chalta hai have attitude. In India everything is taken casually. Chalta hai, गवर्नमेंट है, हम लोग क्या कर सकते हैं, व्हाट कैन वी डू, इट हैपेंस, इट्स ओके, आवर कंट्री इज लाइक दिस ओनली. देयर इज ए पेसिमिज्म इन द पीपल, देयर इज निगेटिविटी, देयर इज अ स्केप्टिसिज्म. पीपल थिंक दैट वॉट एवर हैज हैपेंड, इट लेट इट हैपन, वी कैन नॉट चेंज एनीथिंग. दिस माइंडसेट चलता है एटीट्यूड, कुछ नहीं हो सकता है, कुछ नहीं हो सकता है, कुछ नहीं हो सकता है मीन्स नथिंग कैन हैपन. So all this negative mindset shall end, and I tell you the beginning has to be done from the side of the government only, because unless the top is clean, the bottom will not be cleaned. So the change has to start from the very top itself, then it will be percolating slowly to the bottom. It will not be that suddenly at bottom only the change will start and it will move up. Yes, that bottom up thing can also happen, but first the government and the higher authority has to lead by example. We say India है, यहाँ कुछ भी हो सकता है, means it is India, anything can happen. No, we have to change this mindset. If our every generation is not better than the previous generation, if every generation is not progressive than the previous generation, then we as a society, we as a nation, we as an individual are not evolving. Because what is the definition of evolution? That your next generation will be the better, it will be better than the previous generation. So all these attitudes, maybe it was good in the times of our fathers and forefathers and grandparents and all, but at our generation we should start the beginning, and you know, good beginning is half the work done. So we have to take the initiative. We are Youth India, we can do it. So this is the new India, the slogans are given, new India, digital India and all. So we have to start with the improvements, and slowly impacts will be seen. So the first and the foremost important thing is a strict implementation. Now the next thing would be stringent penalties. See, for example, suppose you violate a law, it will be written in Delhi Metro or Indian Railway platforms that if you spit on the platform, suppose say you will be fined 200 rupees. What is 200? This law was made 10 years back. At that time, say maybe even 20 years back, I am just saying that it was enacted long back. After that, inflation has increased so much, but this 200 has remained 200 only. It should be price indexed. It should be inflation indexed, sorry. It should be inflation indexed. You might have heard this term in your economy lectures, inflation index. What happens with inflation? This should automatically increase. Say for example, if it was enacted in 2000, say, then suppose in 2001 the inflation rate is 10%, so this 200 rupees has to become 200 plus 10%, which will come out to be 20 rupees. So next year it has to become 220 rupees. Next year, suppose 220 rupees. Suppose in 2002, the inflation rate is again 10%. So this 220 plus 10% of 220, 10% of 220 will be 22 rupees. So again 242 rupees. So from 2000 to 2002 only, it has to increase from 200 to 242. Then only it will act as deterrent. But here 200 is remaining 200 for next hundreds of years, next so many decades. So this is not penalty. And also see, for example, a very successful case study you can cite also. India is a country with highest number of road accident and highest number of road accident related deaths. See, almost 1.5 lakh people were dying with road accident till recently, till last year or something. And last year also there was a joke circulating that this is more than the COVID related deaths in India. So road accident is more dangerous than COVID in India. But after this 2017-18 Act, 2019 Act, Motor Vehicle Acts, there was amendment in Motor Vehicle Act, and the fine for the violation of that act has become very stringent. Like if you were traveling without helmet earlier, after enactment of this Motor Vehicle Amendment Act, you dare not to travel without helmet, because the fine will be very high amount, 2000 rupees, 10,000 rupees, your vehicle will be seized. So all these things, take my words, if they are implemented properly, and the government was showing zeal initially, so they were implementing the act very rigorously. So you will see down the line, maybe these things will, now I do not dare to go out without helmet or without having seat belt on my car. So these things will one or the other day bring change if the penalties are very high. If I say, if you do not have seat belt on your car, if you do not have a helmet while you are riding pillion, then you will be fined 100 rupees. Then who will buy with 2000 rupees helmet? I will pay 100 rupees and I will get away. So penalties should be very strict, stringent, and they should be implemented. Third thing is, we should create institutions. Like I told you, we should create laws, rules, regulations and everything. Now we should create institutions, and all those institutions, not only we have to create them, but we have to make sure that they function very efficiently. They function very efficiently and they carry out their jurisdiction and their duties. See, for example, SEBI. See, for example, Enforcement Directorate. See, for example, CCI, Competition Commission of India. See, for example, Employees State Insurance Corporation. All these kind of bodies. See, for example, RBI also. All these bodies we have, institutions we have, but their efficiency has to increase. See, for example, RBI is there, but every other year one or the other bank scam happens. How it is happening? If SEBI is there, how Ireland FS crisis happened? Because we created SEBI after all these scam 1992 and all. So if despite that things are happening there, then there is something wrong. You know, the legislation generally, the laws are generally lagging from the technological improvement and with the corrupt practices. So the laws has to be updated regularly. All these people working in these institutions, they have to be very much trained. Their skill has to be upgraded with time and all. So all these institutional measures has to be there to implement the things properly and strictly. Next point, very important, it is empower shareholder and empower the stakeholders. See, by empowering shareholder, what do I mean? Shareholder empowerment we have done by the way of amendment of Companies Act in 2013, Companies Act Amendment 2013. We have increased the representation of Enforcement Directorate. Their representation has been increased now. They are minimum 1/3. We have increased their diversity. We have increased their diverse background. We have increased their say in the decision making. So all these things are done to protect the interest of shareholders. See, for example, to protect the interest of stakeholders. Stakeholders could be anyone, the villagers, the tribals, the customers, the vendors and anyone. See how we have empowered the stakeholders. Consumer Act. There was question also in 2013 mains that Consumer Act was very progressive act. So with this Consumer Act we have empowered the consumer. In the same way with all these environmental protection acts and all, we have empowered the common man, the NGO, the environmental activists and all. With the help of all these things like say Consumer Act for consumer empowerment, Environmental Act for empowerment of environmentalists and all. So all these stakeholders, small or big, we have to empower them. See for example a Schedule 5 and a Schedule 6 in our constitution. See for example PESA Act. See for example Forest Rights Act 2006. So all these acts are very progressive and they have empowered all the stakeholders. So now we know under these acts the Gram Sabha, they are also empowered to give the social audit. They are empowered to carry out the social audit. They give the permission whether the company will be coming up or not. So all these things are very important in empowering the stakeholders, so that if corporate does something wrong, they will say please stop, we are here, we will not let our interest be compromised by you for your profit. So all these measures have to be taken. Then next measure is that India should go for all the India should ratify international conventions, international laws and all, international bodies. So all these bodies, they are signing many conventions, they are signing many compacts, they have many guidelines. So India should abide by them also and should gain the experience and expertise from the world bodies, because that will be the best practices. They will be the best practices coming from every corner of the world, from every kind of societies. So they will be very helpful for India kind of system, and India can take the best out of them and improve their processes. See for example, we can sign the United Nations Convention Against Corruption, then we can sign the OECD, we can sign the OECD conventions, then we can sign the other conventions which works on, like we can ratify the WTO related things which help us improve the corporate governance and all. So all these measures are very important. So these are basically what we can do on the side of the government, and this will be enough for the measures to improve the corporate governance as of now. We will be meeting in the next video with the remaining topics like corporate social responsibility and corporate sustainability. Thank you.